Hello again, everybody, into my stream. Welcome to my into my stream, not screen. Welcome back. Well, before we start the stream, I just want to say that we are feeling sorry for what happened with the fall of Sriwijaya Air SJ182 that falls in Java Sea just a few minutes after takeoff. Took I don't know, they are still looking for survival, but I think, I don't know, let's pray that there are hopefully survivors. And for those who perish in this incident, let's pray that God would place them in the best possible place beside him. Okay, I'm very sorry for those who lost their members, their family members, their relatives, friends, colleagues. Yeah, it's very, very sad. Event. Okay, we're going to continue again to speak about CME, actually, coding some more. Last time we created an application for monitoring other server using HTTP request. Actually, it's a very simple HTTP client making calls and then recording what happens within the request and also within the response. Because later on, the idea is that from this response, we're going to report this to our server. Means that the application that we create is a client. It will report to the server of their monitoring activities, because this application will monitor servers. So basically, the application will be executing HTTP call in interval basis, maybe every 10 seconds, every 15 seconds. It will call an HTTP server, and then from that call, it will measure the latency. It will measure look into the response body, response code, response header, and then put it into a context where we can report back to the server. Then we can see that the server see that this client is reporting its calling HTTP calling status and data and everything. So then the server can formulate a report that this website is been active, it's not been down for a couple of span of time, and then it will say that it will create a graph whether the payload the latency is increasing or decreasing within the last 24 hours, within the last 3 days, 4 days, 1 week. So yeah, pretty much like a simple monitoring server. So yeah, the idea is we're going to run and deploy this application in multiple sites, multiple places. Some of them will run in server here in Indonesia. Some of them will run on server running from China, maybe running from the US, running from I don't know, Russia. So our client, when they want to monitor the server, they can apply, they can go to our service and then put in the URL of the server to be monitored, and then they can see how their web server performing when it get access from various different sites of the world. So they can say, they can see whether their service delivery is optimal for everybody in any place on the globe. Maybe if your server is serving, I don't know, maybe your server is serving users from around the world, and then they can see if they want to deliver the best performance, the best experience for everybody around the world, they need to make sure that the server, the connection, the bandwidth is enough for those servers, even the remotest place, if they want to achieve that. So we should be able to emulate the server call from around the world. That is one challenge. The second is we have to make sure that our client able to call server in a flow manner. For example, if you want to make sure that maybe a website using our service want to make sure that their dashboard is performing well, but in order to get to that dashboard, we need to be able to log in first. So we have to make at least 2 HTTP calls. The first HTTP call is to do the authentication. They will do the login, and then they will do the loading of the dashboard. And by that, meaning then the second request should be able to utilize the response from the first request. The first request may respond when you log in. The first request will respond with header for session, maybe for a token, because this token obviously will be used for the entire journey later on after the authentication. Maybe when you call the dashboard, you need to supply the session or maybe the token or security information need to be supplied for the subsequent request after the login. So the second request must be able to fetch some information from the first login. That is the second challenge. The third challenge is that for each of these requests, the first request, the second request, the fourth, third, and so on and so forth, we must be able to identify whether the request is actually successful or not, because there is no logical reason if you want to do the second request if the first request is failing. For example, when we do login and then the login fails, the response may be 200. I don't know, maybe some server implementation do that. They just respond with 200 response code, but the body contains failure, contain error. So the second request need to validate that the first request is actually valid. So if the response is 200, for example, if the response is maybe 300 for redirect, maybe there is a header inside. If the header is valid or not. So this kind of thing must be implemented as a prerequisite for the second HTTP call to be decided to be executed or not to be executed by evaluating the result of the first request. The third must be the same. It must be able to validate whether the second or the first request is valid. So, and by looking into this requirement, it could be very, very challenging. Why? Because what if the validation say that you should make the second call if the first call have a response code of 200 something. It could be 200, could be 201, could be 202, but not 300. So we must be able to put some logic into the validation mechanisms. It will be very dynamic if we can use some kind of expression, a Boolean expression. If some value is more than 200 and less than 300, more and equal than 200 and less than 300 to the response code, then it's valid. If it's not valid, then don't bother calling this request. So the monitor is failed. So yeah, that is the I don't know, the fourth challenge. As I speaking, these challenges is actually becoming more and more difficult to implement. But it's very, very good. If we can have this, then it's very nice. So yeah, let's go. Before without more delay, let's try to implement them one by one. Let me start my IDE. Loading up. Well, I don't want to bore you with looking at me and then listening to me without any maybe more enjoyable music. So let's play some music. But because this is YouTube, we need to play something that not against the community guideline, and should not be YouTube will say that you're using copyrighted music, so they will take down my video. So let's play some royalty-free music from Spotify. You see, this royalty-free music they claim is free to be used, free to be monetized, but I hope it's true, because this have lots of followers, this playlist, and obviously I hope it's credible. So let's play. I'm not going to choose what kind of music, what kind of genre. Just I hope it just make it nicer. You can enjoy the music, I hope. Okay, let's continue. Yeah, last time. Oh yeah, by the way, I just read the news that Flash have their last lifetime support is ended 12 tomorrow. So goodbye, Macromedia Flash. 25 years of technology, good technology, and starting tomorrow, you'll be no more. And Microsoft is stripping it out all Flash players, Flash media, or whatever support with them from their platforms, from their operating system even. So, yeah. If you have any question, just don't hesitate, type something in the chat. Any advice? Okay, let's continue. Yeah, we have from our last coding session, we have a job. This is actually a monitoring job, and a job will execute a job context. The job context will store any information from the request and the response. So for every request that we do from this job implementation. For every request they do, they will take the URL, the method, the headers, the body, all the requirements is from the context. The context is very much like a map, string to string map. So it's a key value kind of storage, and it will extract information from that from this context, and then making HTTP calls based on information from this context. If anything goes wrong, maybe there is an error or anything, it will also put back inside the context. So it's very easy. For example, this is one implementation. So yeah, a job is just an interface. It has an execute and validate method. Then we create an HTTP check job. The execute implementation is that, yeah, the parameter is job context. From the job context, URL to invoke is simply get it from the http.request.url key. It's a string key, and then also the method get from the context. It's a very simple map, string to string map. Let's look into the context just to revisit. Yeah, you can see a context is actually a map, string to string map. The get method is just to fetch the string related to the key of the method. Okay, get int, get boolean, all of them is actually coming from the get. So it's all stored in string. We can fetch them as an integer, as a boolean, as a float in their form. We parse them from the string stored inside the context, and then when we put back as an integer or whatever using the set in or set boolean, we convert them into string. So you get the idea. Context is just map string to string. Okay, let's continue. So for our HTTP check, when we call execute, it will get the URL to call from the context, and then get the method from the context. If there is no such information from the context, then we just put back into the context that the HTTP response have an error. Yes, it's true, and the actual error message we put it inside the response error. Okay, and then once we have them, we create a simple HTTP new request. We put the method, we put the URL to invoke, and then new request will actually do parsing of the URL, make sure that the URL is valid, because URL format is already been standardized. So you should do a proper URL, and if there is something wrong with the URL, it will emit an error. So the error will not nil, and then we put it has an error, and then put the response error, and then we just return from the function because it is containing an error. And from there, we're going to parse the request header. We are also getting from the context. We get the map data behind, and then iterate it using range. We have the key and value, the header, and then the information. And then for all HTTP request header dot something, which is this is a prefix for every prefix with http.request.header, we're going to parse each of the value into the actual header that we're going to invoke. See? And then if the context have request body, we're going to fetch this body and put inside the request body for our request. Yeah. And then once we're done, we already put the method, we already put the URL, we already put the headers and the body. We create a client, and then before invoking the client here, we start our timer, because one of the metrics that we want to measure is the response time, the response time. So what we're going to do, we create the client, we start the timer, and then we call the client, the request using our new client. Okay. Yeah. Once the call is done, we calculate the duration of the call. So we put back inside our context HTTP response duration containing the response in milliseconds. Yeah. If there is a call, if this call, the client do have an error, like you already expected, we just put back the error inside the context. And then we close the request body, because this is the advised by HTTP request. When you get a request from a client, you must make sure that the body stream is closed. So after we work with the body, we close the stream. So we defer, we create a defer response body close. Okay, and then we fetch the response code into our context. See, when you see this, that response dot status, this is a HTTP response body dot get status code, means that we get the status code. We save it as string. That's why this formats printf function do. And then we fetch all the response header. So you can, this is a we iterate from the response header and put it back into our context. And then finally, if we have a body, then we read the body from the response, and then we encode it with base64 and then put inside the context back, put back into the context. Okay, this is one very simple validation mechanisms to validate if a context is, this is if the context, for example, we want to make sure that the response should have a validation, should have a requirement that the requirements is put inside the HTTP response valid code. This is if the context have this key HTTP response.validation.code, then the value of this key should be equals to HTTP response code. If it's not valid, then it's a fail. So when we create a monitor, when we specify that you call this URL and the response code should be 200, which is we put inside the HTTP response validation code, means that whenever the request is done, and then we put the response code inside the HTTP response code, this line here, after the call, this one, we put HTTP response code with the response status code. So we make sure that if the validation code is not equal to the response code, then it's an error, it's not valid. Okay. Yeah, if there is a validation code but the response code is not yet defined, means there is an error. Means maybe the HTTP call is not yet done. It's not yet happening. So we just say that there is no response code. This is one very simple validation. What we're going to do, like I already explained in the beginning, that we're going to make this even more sophisticated. Not only just validation. If the code is 200, we must be able to say that if the code is 200 or 300, if the code is between 200 and 299 inclusive, or if the response code is, if the response code minus 200 should be equals to more than 0. It should be expressive. It can be made very, very dynamic. Okay. That's what we have until yesterday. So what we're going to do, like I already told you, request or monitor should be able to handle workflow. Workflow means that if we want to monitor a service that require multiple HTTP code, then we must be able to handle those multiple HTTP code. Like the sample that I mentioned, if we want to monitor a client's dashboard, but in order to get access to that dashboard, we must do a login. So we have to call HTTP call for the login mechanisms, and then from that login, we might obtain a session inside the header or authentication method inside the header, and use this authentication method to make the second call. Because the second call will immediately fail if you have not provided any security proof that you already finished the login. So, but first we make it. Let's make the workflow first. Call the second, and then after the second, you must be able to call the first, and then after you're able to call the first successfully, then you can call the second, and the third, and the fourth, and so on and so forth. So how are we going to do that? Meaning we have to give our requirement or our workflow within the context. So the monitoring context should tell the application that you have 2 calls, and then it will try to make an iteration of these 2 calls, and this all information, the URL, the method of the first, the URL, the method of the second, the header, and everything, and so on and so forth, must be stored inside the context. So how are we going to do that? First, we need to be able to tell that there are 2 calls, 3 calls, and so on. So let's put that right away. So what we can call this attribute? For example, number of calls is job context, because we need to get inside the context the information about how many calls that we should make. So HTTP monitor count. Make it simple, count. So it will return a string. So what we're going to do, let's parse this string into an integer. Alphabet to integer, right? Alphabet to integer from this get method. It will return an integer and an error. If an error exists, we tell them that there is an error. Easy. We put back the error information inside the context. We said, have an error? Yeah, true. What is the error message? HTTP monitor count is not provided or not an integer. Positive integer, more than 0. We cannot make a monitor without any call, without any HTTP check, right? So we have to make sure that if there is a nil, or if there is no nil, the number of calls is not or is less or equal than 0. Okay, so we have number of calls. Then what we're going to do? We're going to make those calls, right? So for call index equals to 0 and call index less than number of calls and call index plus plus. We do all of this. Ooh. Put it in. So all of our checking mechanism will be repeated for the numbers of calls. Okay. As you might have expected, then this key will not be logical anymore, because if we keep repeating the same thing that what happened here, if we keep repeating, then doesn't make sense. We have to able to specify the URL, the method for the first call, for the second call, etc. So we can make this differently. So what we're going to do, either, and it's a very good idea, we have to put in the index. The index of all of the key inside the context as prefix, so we can identify that this belong to which call. For example, if we put something like this, meaning this is the URL of HTTP test for request for the call index 0. So if we have one call, means the index will be 0. If we have two calls, meaning the index will start from 0 and then the second is 1. If we have 4, we have index from everything is from 0. 0, 1, 2, 3. If you have 4, 0, 1, 2, 3. So let's make this 0 as part of the key of everything that we're going to use. Right, so let's do that. How we can do this easily? Can we do this call index plus something like that? No, we have to convert this call index into string, and it's much easier if we can do something like this. The easiest way, in my opinion, like I mentioned you last time, as printf is a magic. So what we're going to do, we put here, and this is our call index. Right? Let's do this. Let's do any no string tools, whatever. We can create a very simple string tools to help us do this, but first let's make it work. Then we can optimize the code, because this code is not running anywhere from these files yet. So later on, when we need this job context to call with a certain prefix, something like that, then lots of other calls, we will call this job context.set, job context.get. Then we can create some helper that will do all of this indexing. It might look ugly for now, but please bear with me now. So like that. Ow! I need this method. Yeah. We get the method. What's the easy way to do this?
Dear God, let me see your vision and view your plans for me. I will pursue when I'm in your grace. I know that you are there.
What I
When I
do?
let you down, I know that you still care. Even at my worst, I've been surprised that you were waiting to come.
Something like that.
in my life. You never gave up.
Okay, error everywhere, but
You with patience to cope.
that's fine.
You were on the cross, laying down on the ground. The very people you made took the hammers to pound. You are my hero. I can't imagine that pain. You could have snapped your fingers and caused a hurricane to knock us on the ground, earthquakes all around. But you chose love and didn't make a sound. When my cross gets heavy, I will remember your way. That your will be done. For this I
Yeah. All of them. All of them. Okay.
your will be done. I wanna live in you.
Then
Your power, your strength, your grace, your son.
close it with
Everyone I
this.
have to love them all to be complete.
Yeah,
Grant the wisdom to
like that.
when I'm scared to move. Give me courage to lead, to be a soldier for you, so I can live life humble, find strength when I'm weak. Give glory to you in every word I speak. Cause if it is a good way, it's a God's way. Focus on your man for me, is where I gotta stay. You are the captain, let the ship set sail. When the going gets tough, we will prevail. Through any kind of weather, I'll fight the good fight. With my faith, my shield, the Holy Spirit, my light. I love you, Jesus, all trust in you. Show me the way, I know that I'll get through.
The first will be the call index. Oh. Okay. So everything will be every key inside the context will be indexed by the number of the call sequence. Right. So when we're going to validate the job context, we also have to specify which HTTP call that we want to validate. Okay. Or we do this elegantly. We get the count. Yeah, we get the count. If there is an error, if there is an error, we just say that it is not valid because it has an error. Okay. So I turned ears in the right way. Love the truth, I couldn't have it any other way. Okay, if you know the number of calls, then we do very much like what the execute does. We trade through the number of calls. Okay. Then we trade. Oh, I forgot the dot. What? It's a comma? No, it should be a dot. Silly me. Search and replace? Good idea, but it's only a couple of them, so we just do this very fast. Yeah. From where? From where? From here? Oh, we forgot that one. Yeah, we forgot this one. Okay.
Negativity here, nope, nada. I make music to make the people happy for the clean cut crowd and the nappy. So come on, throw your hands up and clap, looking like a soul shaker when you shake like that. Real music with a street edge. Can you dig it? So we
Let's
take
test
to a
it.
higher level. I'm with it. I won't lose, so I choose to rap about things with you. I fill the gap with a brand new mix of music for your stereo. Bringing people together just like a mistletoe. The kind of music that makes the world sing on key up.
So, according to this, oh, there's an error. Two errors found. Oh, I see. There you go. According to this, we must have a monitor count. So let's set context, set monitor count. we only have one monitor. Thus, the first monitor, starting from 0, like that, and like that. We checked whether it has an error or not.
I am the Lord your God, who had brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. This is the first commandment. He said that I am the Lord your God. You shall never have strange gods before me. You are the Lord my God. I will never have strange gods before you. He said that I am the Lord your God. You shall never have strange gods before me. You are the Lord my God. I will never have strange
Okay, let's
gods
try that.
before you. If I don't start in the right
Let's
direction,
run this
I'm
test.
gonna reach the wrong destination. So I'm putting God first to show me the way in all of life's
Compiling.
situations. My God the Almighty, the one and only, the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, by the way, guys, if you have any questions,
And to follow his way so I can conquer
anything in English or any in Indonesia, just ask away. Test failed.
the Lord my God. I will never have strange gods before you. He said that I am the Lord your God. You shall never have strange gods before me. You are the Lord my God. I will never have strange gods before you. I don't want to get caught up in the worldly things. Extravagant cars, 10 pounds.
It says that HTTP response from the server's request is not valid.
God, show me the way to do your will every single day. Your love is eternal that I do observe and listen to you because you
To return to 100,
I am the Lord your God. You shall never have strange gods before me.
let's see the validation logic.
I will never have strange gods before you. He said that I am the Lord your God. You shall never have strange gods before me.
What the test is saying,
You are the Lord my God.
it expect 0.http response validation code should be 123.
Nothing in this world is gonna get in my way. I know the real God, and it is you. No matter what gets old, you make all things new. To honor and treasure, your word is what I seek. Please lift up my spirit when I get weak. All under you, one family in Christ. I will follow you for the rest of my life. I am the Lord your God. You shall never have strange gods before me. You are the Lord my God. I will never have strange gods before you.
Let's look into this, right? What is it contains?
You are the Lord my God. I will never have strange gods before you.
Job context. Get this. What is actually inside? So run.
He said that I am the Lord your God. You shall never have strange gods before me. I believe that you are the Lord my God. I will never have strange gods before you.
Oh,
He said
I know.
that I am the Lord your God.
Dot, not comma.
Before me.
Silly me.
That you are the Lord my God. I will never have strange gods before you.
Yeah. Yeah, programmer life. Programmer's life. Programmer's life means that even a single character can develop a bug. Like you've been seeing in here. I just put comma here, and then yeah, immediately it's not found inside the context easily. Now it's working. Okay. So we can make, this is one example, we can make multiple call. Here the test. If we have in our monitoring flow, we need to make one call only, so we just specify that HTTP monitor count is 1. If we want to make 2 call, then we say that HTTP monitor count is 2. So for example, we do this, and first we call Google, and then second we call Yahoo, or what? The TCOM? Let's try it. So his first, this is the second. Yeah, second, after you call that one, you call this. The URL will be the TCOM, a get method. Use the same agent, and this it should be, we expect this to be 200, and then we expect this is also 200. So let's change a little bit in our validation.
Dear God, I wanna thank you for the things you do.
Logic
Every moment of my life depends on
in
you.
our
You
test.
follow the earth, and oh yes, you said it. I will follow you and never regret it. So I pray for those in darkness who laugh, skipping and hopping right down the wrong path when they brag and boast that they love the most.
Here we check only the first one
Trying to cope, you don't believe me.
because I put 0. I hard coded for the test.
So tell me what you see. Is it cool to be a fool and pretend it's okay? The money turns heads and all the wrong way. So I pray
Okay,
the broken
let's run.
give glory to his name and encourage
Let's see.
everybody to do the same. Y'all be surprised how many people
It's
feel
success.
alone. They can build a house, but
Let's
God
see what happened.
home.
Yeah, this is coming from the first the first call to the Yahoo. This is coming from the second. Let's show it all. Oh, maybe this is not a good way to inspect the content of the call, the content of the context. So let's put the context to be able to be inspected by programmers. What should we do? Let's put a string method, shall we? So we can put something like this: function of a context. Too lazy to type in a string. Return a string. It immediately say that it is implementing the method from stringer, because when this object get printed out, it should print out as the string as specified within this function. So yeah, let's create a string buffer. Byte buffer. Then from this buffer we can iterate through the data through the map and then print it out, like for key value of the range in context dot data. We just put buffer dot write string printf. We put the key is a string, and then the value is also a string, so k comma v. Okay, once done, we just return it as string. Return buffer string. Okay, so in our test, we just simply print out all of this printing key value printing. Can remove them all. we just say that test logged the context string. Oh, we can make the context to also implement stringer. Log context let's see how it goes. Oh, of course, how stupid, how stupid. Where is the context? Printf does not add carriage return. Let's call it again. Yeah. Ooh. First response code, respond date head, the header date. Oh. How can we read this right? Because it mixed between the 1 and 0, the first and the second request. But at least it's coming out. You can inspect the content of the context. Means that we need to sort this first. Can we sort a map based on their key? Based on their key? Let's find out. GOLANG sort map key. Sort a map based on your key. Oh, look at that. We cannot sort the map by itself. We need to sort the key, but we need to create a key slice first. Okay, let's do that. To sort a map, we need to sort the key by putting all the key into a slice first, and then we sort them out. Yeah. So where's the context? When we want to print out the context, first we need to have a slice of the key. Keys is equals, you make a slice of string array 0, and then we iterate through the key. We don't need the value because we only need the key. We put the keys into the slice. That's how you do it. And then we don't allocate in memory, so let's sort this. Yeah, sort strings keys. Oh, it's not returning any keys. Like that. And then we iterate through the key for indexed in print out the key is the I, the value is the I. Sorry. Let's see how it's look like now. Oh,
the opposite of the devil who steals and robs. Gifts of the Holy Spirit live in me. Be a shining light for society. When God brought your name into creation, He made a part of Himself.
now
With persistence we
it is sought.
live a life of holiness and conquer sin.
Now from this we able to define multiple call within one monitor, so it's become a stream, not a stream, a workflow, a call monitoring workflow, where we specify how many times you're going to do HTTP call within one monitor. So we say that the monitor have two tasks. The first task we define it like this, and the second task we define it like this. Of course, we can put headers, we can put everything inside.
Gentleness, fruitfulness, and modesty, self-control and chastity is where I wanna be. The fruit of the Holy Spirit can be so present in me. I gotta catch my breath, gotta take a break, a stand for Jesus and never ever be fake. He is holy.
What do you think?
Must be holy vision of Him. With Him we see.
Now, what we're going to do? First, we're able to make a workflow out of our monitor, and then secondly, here by default it will make any validation automatically. One HTTP response validation code should be 200, and if there is error, the job should stop just right there without continuing to the next monitoring job within the chain within this monitor, the workflow. So when we call execute, we repeat as many time as the monitor count specify. And if there is an error, it immediately return. So if the first one have an error, then it will not continue to the second. So because there is no reason. If you have a workflow within one monitor, you have to do 3 calls, HTTP calls, because it is relevant for the first call to call the second call, the second call to call after the second call we call the third one. The second call should make sure that the first call is valid. It is not logical for the second call to make the call within this workflow if the call previously have an error. Yeah. This will validate the entire monitor. It will check for response code expected from each of the tasks within the monitor. This simple code is only to validate the response code. Like here, the first call response code should be 200. The second response code should be 200 as well. Validation of code. So what about validation of others? HTTP header. Maybe header should contain some validation code, and so on and so forth. Let's do that. Let's validate if a response should have a particular header. Make sure that the header exists or not. How are we going to do this? Okay, what am I thinking right now is that we put some logic here, because this logic is to make sure that the code, there is a validation for code. So we must do if there is a validation for header requirement here. So from the context, check if it contains that from this call should have header validation. Okay. Validation header, but this could make things become complex, because we need to validate if a header should contain something. For example, if this header contains multiple header check, I want to know that if I call google.com, this and this and this header must be there. The key, not the value, the key. So it could be like HTTP response validation header key exists. Could be multiple key. And then the server can tell this application that, yeah, you have to check Google, and if it's returning 200 is valid, then you must check the header. It should contain this header and that header. If it's one of them is absent, then the monitor failed. It's not valid. So from the context, if we get this header key, value of this key, I expect them to have a comma delimited value, because it could be multiple headers that we need to inspect. Right. So what we're going to do? So the header that we are looking for, because the header information is actually inside the context by itself, then we just look into the context key if it's contained a particular header. But we need to know the header required. So required header key equals to job context dot get this, it should be a comma delimited values, then we need to split this with comma. So strings split this with a comma. Okay, so we have required header keys, and then we simply do this. For the key in range of job context dot get map. Okay, and then from this map we have to ensure that this map contains this key and that key, right? Very simple. What is the header look like when we put header inside the context? This is request header. Where is the part when we put the response header? There you go. Let's copy that. Okay, the key that we are looking is equals to like that, where the index is from call index and the header comes from the required header. Okay, then let's look into the key. If job context dot contains key to look means that is not found, then it is not valid. That's how we're going to check for header. Whoa. We are iterating from the required key. We don't need the index. Okay, let's test this. Okay, let's put something like that in our context, in our context. Let's see. From our last, it responds with content type. Content type should be text HTML. It should exist content type, and server should also exist. It always response code because it is not logical if you validate the request code, because we are the one who create the request. So yeah, you can see here we only look for the response validation. So we only check for response header, not for request header. Alright. We expect that header key must exist content type and server. So this validate should be true. If it's not true, then test will fail. Okay, run. Okay, test passed. Let's try when we expect another kind of content type. Maybe there is a header called dummy header. Let's see what happens if we call this with dummy header. Still valid. It check for content type, check for server, and then check for dummy header. It has server, it has content type, does not have dummy header. Okay, let's look for this. How the validation do? Let's print it out. Looking for header, that, which is the key to look. Not found. Old school testing. Okay, when we validate, looking for key. Okay, content type. I always forgot to do this.
stay in the light. And we might be able to show others about our faith, living for God. Now ain't that great? Oh, what a feeling, God lives in us. In this world we are, in God we
Not
trust.
found.
Our parents gave us life, put food on
Not
our
found
plate.
for key. Yeah, dummy header is not exist because this is the purpose of we are testing this. If it's not found, then it would return error. So respond oh. Yeah. Yeah, we are looking into the wrong key. It works, definitely works, but we are looking into the wrong key. We need to, when we call valid, we need to know which one is valid. Yeah, which one is valid? The first, the second, or all of them? So when we call valid, is valid or not valid? We need to look into this. There you go. The first response is not valid because we're asking for non-existent header, non-existing header. We turn this off, run. Yeah, it exists, no problem. Ooh. I got a message. Hold on a moment, guys. Something is... Okay. So we can define a monitor context with like this. We can specify how many within one monitor, how many HTTP call that we're going to make. Sorry. How many HTTP method we're going to make. And we can specify that the first call should have this URL to test using this method, using these headers, using that validations. And then if the first one is successful, then you can call the second HTTP call, and so on and so forth. If any of them fail, then it's a fail. The monitor say that it is failing. The first call successful, but the second call is failing. It's logical. Or I cannot call the second call because the first call is failing. All is logical. Okay. Now what we're going to do? How is the we should put something as a parameter for the next subsequent method, because like I already mentioned, if we want to call previously I already explained, when you want to validate the dashboard, but this dashboard can only be accessed when you do the login first, meaning then when you call the login, you need to extract some information to be used in the second call. For example, a HTTP session or token. So we call the login, and then with some parameters provided by the client, the synthesizer, the one who want to make the call with some information, some parameters. It will response back with some kind of token. This token somehow can be accessed by the second call to the dashboard. Second call to the dashboard will, for example, it requires to put the response header of the first call, which is the token, to be put inside the request header, inside the authentication header of the second call. Yeah. Not only that though, you must be able to extract information from the previous call anytime using any means, because these parameters could be inside the body, could be inside the header, could be anything. So what are we going to do here? For example, this is an example. When we want to call the second method, we could put something like this. From the second request header, which is the authentication, you put information, you put this as a value of something like from the first response. First response body, which is this body will have a JSON that contains access token. It should begin with bearer string. Wouldn't it be wonderful? So the value need to be processed first, because this value, this string could infer to the content of the context, other key. Okay, but we're going to do this tomorrow. So I'm going to stream like this, programming in Golang, or maybe IT communication, IT discussion, anytime, anything about IT architecture, because I'm an architect for more than 10 years, IT architect. I create solution for many different discipline, industry, from different client, software architecture. So we're going to talk about architecture, about software development, about IT, and then you can see me do coding in Golang. Maybe I will explain to you how to do how my thought process on creating an application or software. Sometimes I create a solution by defining use case first, how to think as an architect. When you want to create some software, what things need to be considered? How can I approach those methodology, those principle of business logic? How can I approach that? How can I translate that into a class diagrams, into entity relation diagrams? How can between two systems actually talk to one to another to fulfill the business requirement? So this thought process I often talk about. So maybe we can learn something. Maybe you can give some idea. Maybe you can learn something from what I do. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this again, hopefully every day at 2 p.m. Jakarta local time. Um, yeah, feel free, come join to my channel. Um, put I always create a scheduled stream, so you can add it into your calendars every day, hopefully. Yeah, thank you very much for everybody.